well, you should start with nothing and just say, okay, well, what do we actually want to achieve? Hi, I'm Will.
Hi, I'm Jason. Today we're in the group head office, which is in Dortmund, part of the industrial centre of Germany. And coming from Manchester, which is also, it played a big part in the first industrial revolution, particularly. I've always been fascinated by the industrial revolutions, and from the first, which was very much the fuel was steam, it mechanised in industry, and then we had oil and electricity, and we're now in the fourth industrial revolution. And the fourth industrial revolution, the fuel is actually data. Will, give me some examples of where that fuel, the data, can actually power waste and recycling businesses.
Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of different areas. I mean, there's some more generic ones that can go cross-industry, and that's places like maybe the pricing, if the pricing's incorrect, or there's potential for misbilling. And so you could have AI or machine learning or models looking back at your historic prices being used against your current prices and say, oh, maybe this one's got a price missing, or there's a discrepancy, or there's something that just hasn't been billed yet. Any sort of thing around that, definitely around revenue related issues that everyone really cares about, you can find some areas there. I think for the waste and recycling industry specifically, I talk about waste crime or more specifically fraud detection. That's quite a hot topic at the moment, and an area where we could certainly see a lot of potential that AI could harm, and it's also a good area to be in front of. And so again, if you've got all of your data, and it could be sitting in your ERP system or across your Weybridge system, across your operations, having an ability to spot, maybe not before it happens, but as it's happening, any potential fraud, anything that seems out of the ordinary and doesn't fit in with the rest of your data, well, highlighting that and looking into those areas is a huge benefit.
Yeah, I think frauds you're right, it's a very interesting case, and machine learning and its ability to look for patterns of behaviour that perhaps we wouldn't normally recognise as being potentially fraudulent is a really good use of data and to fuel the industry. What about something a bit more, even more sophisticated? What other areas would you be looking at?
I think to go more into data, you could also say, well, it doesn't have to be just your data. You could be bringing in data from external sources. Yeah. So if we're thinking about implementations of, at the moment we're talking about the deposit return scheme and the new dates around that. And if we were looking back into where it's been implemented in Europe, so Germany, for example, many years ago, you could almost take data from where it's been implemented and what's happened to the price of aluminium or the recycling rates around plastics and where councils or municipals might stand to lose money and where people might look to gain money, and having that sort of awareness on markets and governments and outside sources and big data, and bringing that against your internal processes, what might affect you, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, I think there's huge amounts of so much data out there. We can really map and model human behaviour, can't we, from these previous experiences? And DRS is, I think, a very, very good example of where that could benefit the UK, to be able to predict what changes in behaviour will actually happen, what will happen to prices, to volumes, to commercial agreements. It's a very good example. Thank you. So, Will, for anyone thinking about starting or maybe restarting their data journey, how should they begin?
I think that's quite a big question. So I think everything usually starts with frameworks, and it's about maybe not working on, okay, well, these are the reports that we've got to do every month, and starting with that being your, okay, well, we have to make these reports, these are our management accounts, these are our operational reports, these are what the departments want. We don't want to...
The things that they always wanted, that they always had.
Exactly.
Let's say. Yeah.
You might have always had that, but unless you have a reason or a benefit, a value around those reports, well, you should start with nothing and just say, okay, well, what do we actually want to achieve? And if you know what you want to achieve, which is maybe something like increase your revenue, increase your profit, Maybe there's departments that need a bit more efficiencies, and obviously management accounts do need to be done. But finding out those specific areas and then working backwards and saying, okay, well, this is what we want to show, this is what we want to achieve, these are our variables, what data sources do we have available to us, and then build up your journey that way, almost backwards.
So, well, it's one of the hardest parts of our job, I find, is trying to not just teach people new things, but actually get them to forget the old. It's hard for them to, you can't just blank their brains. They are focused on, the P&L and the balance sheet and, those standard management reports. So when we start with this clean sheet of paper, give me some ideas as to what waste and recycling companies ought to be thinking about now, or are starting to think about now.
Yeah, I would agree that they are very resistant, and I mean, I think we would probably be the same as well to start with. As it is hard to go to that blank sheet of paper. Yeah. There's quite a lot of opportunity. I'd say that most of it comes around the actual data sources that they have. So if we're thinking about, for example, in our case with Tegos Suite and Business Central, we have a whole host of data sources. We have huge opportunities because of the size of the sector and the actual depth of data as well that's available. But I say that the hot topics or the areas that people are looking into are definitely around sustainability, being able to facilitate any reporting that they need to do. And then it always comes back to profitability. Everyone wants to know margins, but that does vary by company. Profitability is not just a one and done definition. It's very flexible. But if you can spend the time from that blank sheet of paper and say, okay, these are our business streams. Maybe you have different plants, different areas, different departments, and work out your variables and work out, as to the best ability you can, what costs go against what revenue, and work down to in my case, it would be something like a contract level or a job level or a waste stream level. Work out where you're making money, where your business is doing well and where it isn't doing, let's say, not so well.
And it's hard, isn't it? Because often when you talk about profitability, you've got the accountants in the room. They're the guys looking at it, but they don't look at it in the same way that perhaps a fleet manager, transport manager might look at it, or a treatment facility manager might look at profitability. And I think that's where we can really help with those multiple sources of data. We can bring that together and actually turn that data into knowledge and allow them to really achieve good performance management, and managing the performance of whether it's your fleet of vehicles or your treatment facilities will ultimately positively impact what the accountants see.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of tools, like Fabric, for example, where you're taking all of these different data sources. It could be, tacos from the vehicles, plant operation data, as well as the ERP data and finance data, putting it all into one place and going through modeling to translate it, make sure that it's speaking the same language, saying the same things. And then once you've got all of that information in that source, the insights are then all singing the same song. And you can actually get your data all giving you the correct answers that are backed by each other.
Yeah. I was working with a client recently who we'd done some work, quite a lot of work for them, and they were predicting future patterns, future market behaviours, and what was very important, or made them think very carefully, was the data that we could look at that would foresee changes in shipping costs in certain directions. And in itself, if you increase shipping costs to India, you ultimately are adding pounds, tens of pounds, hundreds of pounds onto every ton of waste that you or recycle that you send to India. And it's that external data, outside. You mentioned data sources. You've got your ERP, you've got your SharePoint, you've got all your document management stuff. You've got all everything internal, but taking that external data and mixing it in is a really, really powerful thing to do, isn't it? And the tools are there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the external sources, as long as it's trusted and available, the big data and such, you can bring that in. The mixed is ringing a little bit in my ear maybe, but yeah, I think the beauty of these sort of tools that we've got available to us now, the analytics platforms really, is that you can just pick and choose what you're using. And maybe if you find something that isn't so consistent, well, then you need to look at that. And that's really a point that we haven't, I guess, spoken about too much, is that data quality is one of the most important pieces of a data journey now. And that comes all the way back to the start, really. And the start of all of these data sources is, okay, well, is it trustworthy? And is all of the data that's going in all good data and trusted data? And that's just another area where, you know, AI and technology can help. And it's giving you that maybe plausibility checks. So if you're going through processes, especially in ERP, where, you know, we're looking at this at the moment, we can have those checks and balances and make sure that the data is consistent as you go through, and it makes sure that the end data at the goal in the data lake in Fabric, everything has worked all the way through, and you can trust it. Yeah. And that's a vital part of the whole process and the whole journey.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that well-used phrase now, probably approximately correct. I think sometimes you're absolutely right. Using AI to improve the quality of the data at the very beginning of the journey is such an easy thing to do now, and such a important thing to do. But sometimes we can use data quality as an excuse not to proceed further down the path. And I think as long as we bear in mind with AI that it is probably approximately correct, and use that mantra when we're interpreting the data and making those decisions, we should be safe. And I think I'd probably add to that companies are making those decisions already, often without the data, without the interpretation of the data. And when you're making decisions based on your feelings, your gut feel, your mood of the day, what you read in the press, it can be a little bit dangerous. And AI can give you the information to support your decision, or maybe to just make you question it a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think that's quite a key point there, is that, yes, everyone talks about data-driven decision making, and yeah, you can have your gut, and then if data backs it, that's great. But if you think about it another way, you could say, this is what I want to do. What are the reasons not to do this? Yeah. And to give you that second thinking. And it's not to make you question yourself at every corner, but it's just to give you something that you might not have considered. Yeah. I think that's also important.
Yeah. And you can actually ask AI that, can't you? You could have a whole load of data that it understands, and you can ask that question, what should I have asked? And it's very interesting what sometimes comes back. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so that's a discussion around the data journey, and it's something that we're very keen to work with our clients, and let's engage, let's talk, let's take it further, and if we can help in any which way, we will. Thank you.